Hello team, today's challenge is Equinox Shadows, where we make the assumption that the sun is directly above the equator and perfectly overhead at noon. It's generally considered to be the halfway point of spring or fall. There's also a fall version. But today we're going to do that and use that to determine the length of a shadow, right? Now, this isn't going to be 100% accurate. If you try to use this in production code, you need some extra stuff because of the curvature of the Earth and the latitude and longitude, stuff like that. But we can use the general math and have a go of it, okay? So sun rises in the east at 6 a.m., sets at 6 p.m. in the west. Shadow is always opposite the sun. I mean, that hopefully makes sense, right? A little bit of common sense stuff. And we return a string, or if there is no shadow, we return no shadow. So a few moving parts. We're going to get this done right now. The first one is going to be right here where we get a time to decimal, okay? And what we're doing here is we're going to send in that time and return our decimal time. So not this. We should actually call it decimal time. I think that's what I called it before. Excellent. We haven't actually made this, so let's go and do that. Function, pasting that in and doing some stuff, okay? The first step, we've seen this sort of pattern before with time where we split it apart so that we can do the math on it, okay? We're going to do the exact same thing. So inside of here we have not capital H, but hours and minutes, okay? That's going to be equal to time.split on the colon, okay? Which means that we can return that decimal time. Normally in past ones, we've changed the hours to minutes so that we had a full minutes thing that we could work on. But here we can just go decimal hours. So it's going to be the hours plus minutes divided by 60, right? And by doing that, as an example, they say that it'll only ever be 30 minutes, right? So 12:30 or 1:30 or so on, right? So 30 divided by 60 is 0.5, right? Hours plus 0.5 is the hours 0.5, right? There is a catch in here that this is a string, and we will actually be concatenating these together, which means putting those two strings next to each other. We aren't actually doing the math. In order to do that, we need to coerce these two numbers just like this, and that should be it, right? If we wanted to, we could wrap this in parentheses. It doesn't actually do anything here, okay? It's just for ease of readability, if you like that, okay? But with that, we have our decimal time, and we can do something with it. So the next one is this, where we actually get two things. We get the difference, okay? Did I call it difference before? Let me check. I called it distance, sorry. So the distance and the direction, okay? Distance and direction is what we're going to go for on this one. And we are going to get those from something called get, dist, and dir, okay? Right here we pass in decimal time, just like this, a function we haven't created. So let's go and do that right here, okay? We keep creating these functions because they're easier to test, right? I can test this piece and make sure that it works. I can also test this piece that we're about to create and make sure that it works. And of course, we have one more function coming up. We can test that one too. So lots and lots of testability, right? And hopefully easier to maintain, hopefully, okay? But right here we have this. We need to get the distance, okay? The distance is equal to 12 minus decimal time. Do it right. That should be a minus decimal time, all cubed, okay? Now, this is going to take action before this does, so we actually do need parentheses on this one, okay? If I can highlight it properly, there we go. So 12 minus the decimal time to the power of 3. This could be a negative number, but we will fix that in a second. Don't worry, okay? So based on that, we're also going to get the direction, okay? And in fact, we're going to use that potential negative to determine if it's east or west, right? This is where that comes into play. So we get math.sine of distance, spelling it right. And if that is equal to -1, then we have east, right? So if you're looking at this, let's scroll down a little bit, find east. 12 minus 15 is -3, so negatives are east. 12 minus 10 is +2, so that is west, okay? So we have east here and west here, okay? The last bit is to return something. We're going to return this array, right? So we have the distance. But remember, distance is currently negative. We don't want that. We want a positive number. So we are going to go math.abs for absolute, which kind of just gets rid of the negative, okay? Just like that. And the direction. Brilliant. So now we have distance and direction, and we need to fill this part in, okay? The last part is a conditional because we absolutely need that. So the last part is going to be has shadow, okay? And this is where we determine if we're even allowed to return a distance or if we just return no shadow, okay? So for this, we go decimal time, okay? Just like we have before, and create that function, okay? Copying this, I'm gonna get rid of that semicolon because it's bugging me, and it will in a second too, but function has time, okay? Or has shadow, sorry. I'm gonna use decimal time a couple times here. So I'm just gonna copy it to my clipboard, return. The first one is the 6 o'clock, okay? 6 a.m. and then 6 p.m. and 12 noon, high noon, right? We need to take care of that. So we look at decimal time and we go greater than equal to 6. And using the right one, there it is. Tabbing this in, making it pretty, decimal time less than 18, right? Because it's a 24-hour clock. So we absolutely have that 18 is 6 p.m., okay? And decimal time not equal to 12, okay? So we have an interesting thing here, and the way that this works, if we go back here, you'll see that the sun rises at 6 a.m., and that implies that there is a small touch of sunlight right at 6 a.m. But it sets at 6 p.m., which implies that the sun is completely gone at 6 p.m., which is why this is greater than equals, but this is less than. Okay, hopefully that's making sense. We don't want to do both, and in fact, our tests reflect that. So 6 a.m. has a distance, whereas 6 p.m. does not, okay? So jumping back here, we're going to do it. And just like that, we have all that stuff, okay? So has shadow, we can go down here and do some stuff. This is going to be a string that we come back to, and this is going to be no shadow sentence case, okay? Which means just the first word. Now here, we have distance, right? We've already taken care of that. It's going to be in feet, so we need to actually type that part, FT, space, direction, okay? Direction just like this, and the whole thing works, okay? Now, before I get into some of this, I do want to cover off a little bit of a thing here, okay? This is very readable, very easy. I like putting my variables right at the top of the function. It makes it easier to read. A lot of linters and stuff like that will actually try to force you to do that where possible. But there is a small thing here where we are always doing this math. But there are at least 12 hours where we don't need to, right? From midnight to 6, and then from 18, which is 6 p.m., all the way back to midnight. And of course, the very exact 12 noon, high noon, okay? So there are slightly better than 12 hours where this math doesn't really make sense, right? It's very readable. It works. But honestly, for performance reasons, I would not do it this way. Instead, I would put an if statement in here, okay? And maybe you already have, maybe you're ahead of the game, and that is a good thing, okay? So has shadow, we're going to copy that away, but this time we're going to go if not has shadow, okay? So if it does have shadow, we want to do the math. But if it doesn't have a shadow, then we just return no shadow. And I keep wanting to capitalize the S on that, but no shadow. Now, of course, this is still going to work. It's not going to do anything because we haven't corrected for this. But if we get rid of that has shadow and we get rid of this bit here, you'll notice that everything works, okay? So this comes down to readability. I believe this is slightly more performant because we aren't doing all of this math, okay? So you will get performance gains by doing it this way, by returning early, right? That's what they call this. In fact, we could have returned early right from the time. The reason that I didn't was if we look at this, for my conditional right here, I would actually have to compare against strings. And comparing strings can be a little bit challenging, right? It's prone to bugs, whereas working with numbers greater than, equal to, or less than, numbers is easier for the comparison. So I like this. I like doing this little bit to make sure, but then returning early because I don't want to do this math just to return no shadow, right? That doesn't make sense to me. So bringing it home, here's what we've done. We've created a few functions. One to create it, move it to decimal time. Moving it to decimal time, the nice thing about this is that, again, they guaranteed it somewhere in here. I forget where. That it would only ever be 30-minute. There it is, 30-minute increments, right? So it's either going to be noon or the 30. But any of these times, okay, no matter what time they give us now, this will just work. Okay, so if they gave us 12:37 for some strange reason, this is still going to work. Okay, it's still going to play out. It's still going to give us the right distance. We do it. Okay, which makes this really, really handy. Okay, then we actually calculated the distance and the direction, and we did that using that decimal time, right? So it gets really easy because we're just doing math, right? Just doing math. We used the sign, whether it was negative or not, to determine east or west, and we return that as an array. And then we created a little helper function to return true or false based on if there was a shadow or not. Could all of this code have been down in the main body of our function? Absolutely. The reason that I like it is, again, easier to test, easier to debug, easier to maintain. Okay, so breaking out little, even one-line helper functions and stuff like that makes a huge amount of sense to me. To which all those come down here. So again, we get that decimal time. We test if there's a shadow. If there isn't, we return, getting the distance and direction, and outputting. Okay, just like that. Did you like this? Did you hate it? Did you find another way that you want to share? Do all of that in the comments. I love reading those. Otherwise, today this has been Equinox Shadows, right? Read my notes there. And yeah, I will see you tomorrow.